Good evening, guys. Guys, this is the second session of second day of ongoing 3 days online webinar series on the topic emerging opportunities in the food processing sectors. Today's eminent speaker, like morning we had a very good session with Mr. Satish Borkhade sir. Like a similar way, now also we have a eminent speaker, which is her name is Mrs. Sumedha Jalgaokar, madam. Madam, good evening.
Good evening, Imran. I hope my
Uh,
voice is okay.
yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, thank you.
So, all the peoples or all the guys which are participated or which are present in this seminar, they know this ma'am very well. She does not need any kind of introduction because she belongs to the food technological era. Because we know about in each and every industries we have to implement the different schemes, different activities like ISO, BRC, FOSTAC, which is Advanced Training Program. Without this implementation of this kind of an activities or program, no industry can run. Only we are listening, we are hiring that HACCP is the so and so technique HACCP. But in order to actually implement these techniques, we need to go into the deep of this particular trainings programs. So this Sumedha ma'am has conducted more than 180 training programs related to the ISO, FSSI, HACCP 22,000 and 20,000. And she also has experience of more than 14 years in the food production or in the food processing sectors. So day by day, each and every industry is implementing her training programs, and she's giving training programs for the students as well as for the colleges, institutes, and many more multinational industries also arranging the programs of this Sumedha ma'am, because these activities or these training programs which plays an important role in the terms of actually implementing the internal auditor systems in different industries. So if we started introducing or if you're giving the points of ma'am, we could not, this 1 hour is not sufficient. So by not wasting your time, our time, we shall directly start to this webinar session, and both participants as well as we are also eagerly waiting to listen to the Sumedha ma'am. So ma'am, shall we start?
Yes, I'm completely ready. So you
Oh,
can start sharing the screen.
okay, ma'am. Now I will hand over to Ms. Sumedha ma'am. She will she will be going to deliver or she will be going to address this particular session. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Imran, and the entire team who has arranged such a nice webinar. So I would personally like to thank all of them. And as we have discussed, that we'll start soon because what I want is we will complete the session, which is an introductory session on various food safety standards, and we are going to have some discussion on what are these standards, what are the specific things in those standards, and why to implement such standards. So this will be our entire line of presentation. And after that, I would like everyone, I would love to take the questions, because that's something I really want to answer and interact with whatever possible number of candidates for the today's session. So let us start with the session. We are going to discuss about various international food safety standards and the certification process. And the context of today's presentation is which are these standards, what is there in those standards, and why to go with these standards. So what we are typically going to discuss is food safety standards, which, what, and why. All right. So let us go. Can we go to the next slide, Imran? Hello. Please go to the next slide.
One second, ma'am. Many more multinational industries also arranging the programs of this Sumedha ma'am, because these activities or these training programs plays an
Right. As Imran has already given my introduction, so I will not waste much of the time to give my introduction. But I would just want to say that I'm a food technologist, and I'm so proud to say that I'm a food technologist, and I have done MTech from Parbhani College of Food Technology, Permanent. And since last 10 years, I am doing all the work related with food safety standards. So this is something which I would just tell in the introduction because the rest of the things Imran has already covered. So let us go to the next slide.
Yes, yes, I'm completely ready. So you can start telling the thing.
Yeah. So now when we say food safety, there are a lot of things that comes in our mind, and if you see the typical definition, it says that assurance that food will not cause any adverse health effect to consumers when it is prepared and or eaten according to its intended use. Which means there are so many things around food safety. But
So
basically
now
it is
when
the
we say food
assurance
safety, there
that
are a lot of
whatever
things
the
that
consumer
comes
is
in
going to
point of mind,
consume,
and
that will not
in the
cause
typical
anything to him.
definition, it
Okay.
says
So
that
this
assurance
is
that food will not cause
related with the
any adverse
intended
health
use,
effect to
how the food
consumers
product is
when
being
it is
consumed.
prepared.
What is the typical things that should be considered while consumption is there? Okay. So this is the specific definition, but essentially food safety means the food product should be free from any kind of contamination. That means the hazard, and it should be free from any kind of adulteration. And when I say adulteration, it means it should not have anything which is intentionally added to hamper the food safety or food quality parameters. So safe food means something which is free from any sort of contamination and something which is free from all kind of adulteration. So this is typical definition of food safety. Let us go to the next slide. Now, when we think about food safety, for every country, there is a specific mechanism to ensure food safety in that country. All right. So, if you take example of India, we have FSSAI. Everyone knows what is FSSAI. That is Food Safety and Standard Authority of India. Okay. So, when we think about overall scenario about food safety in any country, there are three basic elements into it. The first element, which is a regulatory compliance, which is taken care by the regulatory authority of that country. And for India, it is FSSAI. For US, it is US FDA. Likewise, there are various regulatory agencies in various countries, and that are responsible for ensuring food safety in that typical country, right? Then the second element of food safety is voluntary food safety standards. And when I say voluntary food safety standards, those are international food safety standards like HACCP. I hope everyone knows HACCP, ISO 22000, BRC, IFS, SQF, which means there are so many standards. And if you just refer to this particular information, I have written it is a voluntary standard, which means this is something which a typical food industry will go ahead on their own. It is not mandatory. But most of the food industries now and in future will definitely opt for such standard because they want to be sure about food safety for the products that are being manufactured in their industry. So this is the second element. And the third and foremost important element to ensure food safety is the awareness customers and consumers have. So now we can we can see from the situation of pandemic and lockdown, we as a consumer have become much more aware about food safety. So we think that food should be safe, and all this fear has created a lot of insecurities in our mind regarding food safety. So the third factor to ensure food safety is the customers and consumers awareness, what is their approach, what information they know about food and food safety. So these are the three elements which will ensure food safety in any country. So as I said, the first one is something which is mandatory, which is the regulatory compliance of that country. Second, the voluntary international food safety standards. And third, customers and consumers awareness. Now in today's presentation, we are going to essentially discussed on different food safety standards, which I have mentioned in international food safety standards, which are the voluntary food safety standards. So this is basically the background how each country will take care of food safety in their country. So let's go ahead with the next slide. Now, as I just give an example, there are various, regulatory authorities. For example, as I said, in India, it is FSSAI, which is Food Safety and Standard Authority of India. Basically, the Food Safety and Standard Act, जिसको हम हिंदी में अन्न सुरक्षा कायदा बोलते हैं, which will take care of food safety in India. Then for US, it is different. For Canada, it is different. And all these regulations in different countries will take care of the compliance part. They will set the rules for food industry. They will set the regulations for food industries, and they will even have the guidelines, which is very very important for food safety in that country. So this is basically the compliance part. Let's go ahead with the next slide. Now let's come to the specific food safety standards, which are various. I had tried to mention all the famous, all the popular food safety standards, which are very widely accepted in food industries. And these are the standards. The first one is HACCP. And when I say HACCP, HACCP, this is something, these are the synonym terms which I always say that food safety and HACCP is a synonym, because we cannot imagine food safety without implementation of this particular concept HACCP. Now HACCP is a concept as well as this is a certification also. This is an international food safety standard also. When implemented, you can get certified for HACCP also. Then another popular standard for food industry is ISO 22000, which is Food Safety Management System. Now this is a similar standard to other ISO standards, and we all know very well that there are various ISO standards very famous in all kind of industries, like ISO 9000, which is Quality Management System. Similarly, in that series of ISO standard, there is a specific standard to ensure food safety, and that is ISO 22000, which we famously call FSMS, Food Safety Management System. The third very famous standard is FSSC 22000, which is Food Safety System Certification 22000. Now we are going to go into detail of this standard, and we will understand why these standards are called as 22000. Okay, why it is called as FSSC 22000? Because obviously it contains ISO 22000 standard and few more things which we will see in subsequent slides. Then next standard is BRC standard, which is a very specific standard for UK. They have designed that standard, and we will go into detail of that standard. IFS is another very popular food safety standard, and SQF is another standard. Now, as far as BRC, IFS, and SQF, these three standards are concerned, these standards not only take care of food safety aspect, but they will ensure the quality aspect also. So let us try and understand all these standards briefly. We cannot go into so much detail in this 1 hour presentation, but I have tried to summarize all these standards and what are the specific content, what are the specific parameters of those standards, what are the major requirements covered in those standards, specific auditing things, specific acceptance, and everything we will be discussing into subsequent slides. So let us go to the next slide. HACCP, the first standard, as I said, HACCP is not only the standard but the concept which will ensure food safety, which says hazard analysis critical control point. Now, what we do in HACCP is, first, we analyze what are the hazards that can enter into food products. Then the second step is we analyze where from all these hazards can come into the food product. And third one, after analyzing the hazard and the source of the hazard, we go ahead with the prevention mechanism or the control method so that we can control those hazards, which means how we can either prevent or eliminate or reduce such hazard. So this HACCP concept or HACCP certification will analyze the hazard, potential hazard, will analyze what are the sources of those hazards, and will help you to develop the mechanism to control those hazards. And ultimate aim of everything is to ensure the food safety. So this is a typical HACCP standard. Let's go ahead with the next one. And I hope if many of the students are attending this, and they can definitely see with this slide something which is very familiar to them, the 12 steps of HACCP implementation. The 12th step of HACCP implementation includes 5 preliminary steps and 7 principle of HACCP. I am sure everyone must have heard and gone through the concept and the principle of HACCP. And I will not go into history of HACCP because everyone knows that how the how NASA and Pillsbury came together to develop this concept, initially for astronaut around 1960, and then this was taken as a certification, and that become very popular in food industry. So these are the steps, 12 steps of implementation of HACCP. Step number, I will just go through that in very briefly, because we will not go into detail of each step, but the steps are making the food safety team a multidisciplinary food safety team. This is step number one. Then the second step, the team will collect all the information regarding raw materials, ingredients, packaging material, food contact surface, and the finished good. So this is basically information collection and describe that information about the product. So this is step two. Step three is regarding intended use. If you remember, in the definition of food safety, we were discussing about the intended use. So basically, intended use is how the product should be consumed, how the product should be used, whether this product is suitable to which kind of population, whether it is suitable to them, whether it is not suitable to them, whether it contains any allergen. So all such parameters are part of this concept called as intended use, which is related with food safety. So in step number three, we analyze what is intended use of the finished product, and accordingly we decide how the product should be used or should not be used. So this is step number three. Step number four is basically drawing the flow diagram, a manufacturing flow diagram for the food product, which start right from receiving of the material and which ends at dispatch of the process or dispatch of the product. So this is basically the flow chart. So we have to make the flow chart. When I'm saying we have to make, it means the food safety team has to make the flow chart. Step number five is saying about verification of flow chart. Whatever flow diagram the team has prepared, they have to take that flow diagram, go on site and actually verify the steps, whether everything which is happening on site is covered in our flow diagram or not. If there is anything which is missing, we have to include that in flow diagram before we go ahead with the next step. All right, so this is a this is a purpose of on-site verification. First, to ensure whether everything which is happening as a part of process is covered in our flow diagram or not, and to ensure the sequence of the activities which we have mentioned in the flow diagram is matching with what is happening really on site. So this is on site verification of the flow diagram. Now, as you can understand, step number 1 to 5 are called as preliminary steps, which is basically collection of everything, combining everything to put together so that we can go ahead with the further steps. The further steps are nothing but 7 principle of hazard. The first principle is hazard analysis. Now, when I say first principle, which is step number 6, hazard analysis will cover three main parts. The first one, we have to identify the potential hazard in each step, which is mentioned in the flow diagram. Second, we have to analyze how risky is that hazard, which is the risk assessment part for the hazard. And third one, according to the hazard and according to the risk, we have to develop or design the control methods or control measure mechanism to control that hazard in that step. So this is step number 6, which is called as hazard analysis. Now, after doing hazard analysis, step number 7, principle number 2 is to determine critical control point. Now, not all the steps will be critical control point, but in the flow diagram, there will be some of the steps which, if we miss, will be very risky to food safety, and we have to think that there will not be any further control over the hazard in our process. So these are the specific steps at which we must we have to take care of food safety with application of additional control measure, with application of something which is more than the basic things, and that is called as CCP, critical control point. Now, step number 8 is to establish critical limit for each critical control point. Whatever critical control points we have identified, in step number 8, we have to implement the limits for that. Then step number 9 is establish monitoring method. Whatever CCPs we have identified and whatever limits we have applied or established for that CCP, we have to have a typical monitoring process for each CCP. Now, when I say monitoring, it means formal, typical state of observation or planned sequence of observation along with recording. So we have to check whether our CCP is within the limit or not. So this is monitoring process. Step number 10 is corrective actions. Now, if during monitoring you find that there is some deviation in critical control point, then you have to go ahead with taking correction and corrective action, and that is covered in step number 10. Then step number 11 is saying about the verification mechanism. So there will be somebody who will be doing verification, and there will be another person who will be doing cross checking. Now, this cross checking of that entire process is called as verification. So, in step number 11, we have to define the verification mechanism to ensure the CCPs are within the limit. Right? And last step, which is step number 12, which is right from step number 1 to step number 11, for every step we have to establish the documentation, and there has to be corresponding records, which is for every step. So this is all about the 12th step of HACCP. Can we go to the next slide? Then the next standard, which is very popular, I think most of the students and many of you have seen these standards, and they are familiar with this standard, and it is called as ISO 22000 standard. Now I have written ISO 22000 2018 because in 2018 this standard has been amended. Now initially this standard has been established or published first in 2005, and if you look at the standard, it is always written in this format, ISO 22000 2005, which was the old standard, and now the recent version is ISO 22000 2018, because in 2018 this standard has been updated or amended, and now we are using the 2018 version. Now this standard is a very generic standard, again applicable across the food chain, entire food chain, for its direct element and indirect elements. So direct elements are primary processing, secondary processing, storage, dispatch, distribution, all these things. All these are the elements which are the direct element of food chain, while supplier of equipment, supplier of packaging material, or supplier of chemical for food industries are indirect element in food chain. Now, as far as ISO 22000 standard is concerned, any company, any organization which is directly into the food chain or indirectly in the food chain, they can go ahead with this certification. They can implement ISO 22000, and then they can get certified for this standard. So this is very nice, applicable to all direct as well as indirect elements in the food chain. Now, as far as ISO 22000 is concerned, there are four pillars for ISO 22000. First one is the management system. Second pillar is prerequisite program, and we typically call that the PRP. Third one is the concept of HACCP, and fourth one is the interactive communication. Now, as far as the HACCP standard is concerned, there was no management system element and no interactive communication. So these are the added elements which is part of ISO 22000 standard. Now, when we see the certification process, companies will go for certification, they will get the certification, and that certification is valid for 3 years of cycle. And in that 3 years of cycle, there will be every year there will be surveillance audit, and after 3 years there will be recertification audit. So this is the typical certification cycle for ISO 22000 2018. Let's go ahead. Now, this recent version, the 2018 version for ISO 22000, is based I mean, any management standard is basically based on PDCA: plan, do, check, act. Here also the same principle is there: plan, do, check, act. But as far as this 2018 version is concerned, it is not only taking care of food safety aspect or food safety risk aspect, but it is also taking care of organizational risk. So it will take care what are the risks to organization in terms of technological risk, marketing risk, risk regarding competition, and all the aspects which can be elements which will be risky for organization as far as the business continuity is concerned, business sustainability is concerned, or business expansion is concerned. So ISO 20000 2018 version will talk about everything including food safety. So that will definitely talk about food safety, but along with food safety, it will talk about entire organizational risk also. So there are clauses given in this. I will just read and I will just let you know about these clauses in brief. The context of organization is the first clause, which is basically clause number 4, because ISO standard, the first three clauses. The first clause is scope, second is normative reference, third is terms and definition. But the first three clauses are non-auditable clauses. So the requirement or the auditable clauses start from clause number 4 and it ends at clause number 10. So there are these clauses which is context of organization, which will talk about what is organization risk, how to identify the issues for organization, and how to take care of that issues by analyzing those issues. Then the next one is the leadership clause. Now, in this leadership, this standard is not only saying that management should give commitment, but in addition to that, management, food safety, I mean, management of a food plant, they should take leadership. So they should set an example, and people should be following that example as far as the responsibility for management or top management is concerned. So they should fulfill all the requirements which are related with taking leadership to implement and ensure consistent implementation of food safety management system. Then the next part is regarding planning. Planning is all about risk assessment. So here we are doing risk assessment for organization. So we will be analyzing what are the specific risks to organization. If they go ahead with all these things, what are the risks and what are the opportunities, further opportunities for betterment of the business and expansion of the business. And all these things, risk and opportunity, shall be converted into the planning. What should be done to cover that risk or to take opportunity or to take advantage of that opportunity. So that is covered in planning. Here we also discuss about objective, setting the objective for organization. After doing planning, we have to set the target or goals for the organization in terms of the food safety objective. Then the next clause is regarding support. Here, basically all the resources which are required for any organization to ensure food safety are covered, which is manpower requirement or human resource, then infrastructure requirement, work environment, or the requirement which is in terms of resource which you are taking from external source, external resource, or external services. So everything will be taken care in clause number 7, which is support. Then clause number 8 is covering most of the food safety aspect, which covers the traceability part, emergency preparedness part, then PRP, prerequisite program, and HACCP, which is also called as hazard control plan. So clause number 8, operations, is covering all the aspects regarding food safety. Then clause number 9 is saying all about performance evaluation, how each organization evaluate their performance, because we keep recording the things, we keep getting the data, but somewhere we have to analyze that data to understand whether we are going in right direction or not, and to get input for further improvement. So this is a typical performance evaluation in terms of doing internal audit, conducting management review meetings, and then deciding what should be the way forward for that company. And last one is the improvement. As I said, we do go ahead with these international standards to achieve improvement, because that is what is the ultimate aim. So with implementation of plan, do, check, act, we ensure the improvement. That is the continual improvement. Let's go ahead. Can we go? Yeah. So, HACCP and ISO 22000 standard we have discussed till now. These standards are not approved by GFSI. Now, GFSI is Global Food Safety Initiative. Now, this is one non-profit organization which approves, which, what they do is they study all these standards of food safety across the world, and for they approve some of the standards. They have their own criteria for benchmarking of the standard. So what they do is they study all these standards, then they compare those standards against the benchmarking criteria. If that standard meets the criteria, then they approve that standard, and these standards will have definitely much more weightage than the standards which are not approved by GFSI. So GFSI is Global Food Safety Initiative. And if you see in this slide, there are so many big brands which are accepting the standards which are approved under GFSI. And if you see the GFSI approved standard, then BRC, which is Global Standard for Food Safety, FSSC 22000, SQF, and IFS, these are the standards which are approved under GFSI, Global Food Safety Initiative. Let us go to the next slide. So next one is we will discuss about FSSC 22000 standard. Now this has become a very popular standard in recent time. Let's say around from last 5 to 6 years, this has becoming a very popular standard in food industry. And if you see the component of this standard, FSSC 22000 standard contains ISO 22000 standard as it is. The entire standard is taken here as a part of FSSC scheme requirement. So the first element is ISO 22000 standard. The second element is prerequisite program standard. Now what happens in ISO 22000 standard is, in ISO 22000, the PRPs are given, but that is not into detail, it is not specific PRPs. What is said in ISO 22000 standard is organization shall consider following PRPs, but it is not given how these PRPs shall be implemented by that organization. So all the detailing and the specific aspect for implementation of PRP is not covered in ISO 22000 standard. And for that reason, the specific and separate PRP standard has been established, and that is called as sector specific PRP. For different sectors, there are different PRP standards. So second element for FSSC scheme is PRP standard, and third element is FSSC 22000 requirement, which is also called as additional requirement for FSSC. Now, why to have these three elements? Because if you can see ISO 22000 standard and PRP standard. PRP standard is also ISO standard, which is ISO TS and different standard into that. But that is also a typical ISO standard. Now, if you refer to these two ISO standards, these are not, these are not published by, or these are not controlled by FSSC. FSSC has taken that standard from ISO as it is. So they cannot do any kind of changes in ISO 22000 or PRP standard. So now if FSSC 22000 or if FSSC Foundation want to do any modification, addition, updation into FSSC scheme, they can do it only in the third part, which is the FSSC 22000 additional requirement. So these are the three elements of FSSC standard. Let us go to the next slide. Uh, just go ahead with. You can just click twice or thrice. I can just will see the entire slide. Right. So this is the structure of FSSC standard. As I said, it contains ISO 22000 standard. It contains sector specific PRPs. Now, what are these sectors? These are various sectors, including food manufacturing sector, catering sector, transportation, wholesale and retail. So for every sector, the different PRP standards are there. And the third part is the additional requirement. Now, if any organization want to go ahead with FSSC 22000 certification, they have to consider three elements. First, they have to consider ISO 22000 standard. Then they have to consider the additional requirement. These two are the common element for FSSC. But what will change from sector to sector is the PRP part, which is different for different sectors, and the specific standard for PRPs are given. Like for example, ISO TS 22002-1. This is a sector specific PRP standard for food manufacturing. ISO TS 22002-2 is for catering PRP. So depending upon the sector, we have to choose the sector specific PRP. So this is the structure of FSSC standard. Please go ahead with the next slide. This was all about FSSC standard, which is again the certification is for 3 years, and every year there will be surveillance audit, and after 3 years there will be recertification audit. So this is FSSC standard. The next popular standard is BRC, which is also called as Global Standard for Food Safety. Now, this standard has been established by British Retail Consortium, and the standard is called as brand reputation through compliance. This has been established by British Retail Consortium, which is association, the trade association in UK food retail industry. This was created in 1992, and the first standard for food was established or published in 1998. Now, this will take care of all the aspect of food product, which is food safety aspect and food quality aspect. So, this standard will take care of both the aspects. And as we can see that this is a standard which is regularly amended in every 3 years. So, this is a specific time within which the standard will be updated, which means every 3 years there will be new version of this standard or new issue of this standard. And the current issue which we are using right now is issue 8 for BRC standard. And as I said, a revision is there in every 3 years. Now, this standard is a little different than other standard because this standard will not only say whether you are satisfactorily completing the requirement or not. In addition to that, it will give the grade, different grades for certification. We will see that in the next slide. This is a standard which discusses or which says about food safety culture. uh, Again, a very important concept, because food safety, if you know, if we have to have implementation thoroughly about food safety in any organization, the organization shall take care to develop the food safety culture, and this standard is discussing, saying all about food safety culture. And another typical part of this standard is there will be announced as well as unannounced audit. Now, when we say announced audit, uh, a regular audit wherein auditors will inform you that they are coming, and then they will come and do audit. Whereas unannounced audit is auditors will not inform you, they will just come and start doing audit. Now, this is basically to understand the real situation or real scenario of implementation, real status of implementation. Now, this is there in BRC, but for BRC it is optional. Organization can decide whether they want to go with announced audit or unannounced audit, but definitely there are added benefit if organization go for unannounced audit and they qualify into that. So that affects the grading for that organization. In FSSC also there are unannounced audit which is mandatory. So the surveillance audit, two surveillance audit, out of that two surveillance audit in 3 years cycle, one surveillance audit will mandatorily be unannounced. So for FSSC, one unannounced audit in 3 year of cycle is a mandatory part. Here it is voluntary part. Please go to the next slide. So these are the specific element of the standard. As I said, a very important part of the standard is senior management commitment. When we say food safety, it has to start from the senior management of the top management of the company. So it says about senior management commitment. Then it says about the food safety plan, which is nothing but HACCP. Now, if you refer to any food safety standard, including FSSC, BRC, IFS, SQF, all of these standards, do contain HACCP as a part. Okay, so HACCP concept as an element is there in every food safety standard, which gives us the idea how important HACCP is. So it is there in every standard which is there for food safety. Then it says about food safety and quality management system. As I said, it will take care of not only food safety, but it will take care of quality aspects as well. Then there is a specific clause regarding the site standard, which will say about how the infrastructure should be, how the typical site standard should be for food safety. Then how process control should be, how product control should be. Then a specific clause regarding the people or personnel which are working in food industry. So what should be the requirement for them? So this is also covered here. And there are specific requirement for different categories of food product, like high risk product, high care product, ambient high care product. So depending upon the risk of the product, the requirements to be implemented are given in this specific standard or clause of this standard. And if there is any organization which is into trading, they are doing just trading of food product, for them the clause number 9 states the specific requirement how the trading of the product should be there. And if you refer to some of the parts given into the slide, that specific things are there which is called as fundamental requirement. Now when I say fundamental, which means if organization do not implement that requirement completely and effectively, the certification will not be provided to them. And these the fundamental requirement covers internal audit part, FSMS part, HACCP part, senior management commitment, improvement, traceability, and you can see that list. Training is also one of the fundamental requirements. So we have to think that these standards are very specific as well as stringent. If the fundamental requirements are not addressed completely and effectively, the company will not get certification. So this is the BRC standard. Please go to the next slide. Now BRC standard do contain grades. So certification will be provided with a grade uh, for announced audit and unannounced audit. And if you can see announced audit, there are A, B, C, and D grades. And these grades are related with number of major and minor non-conformities which are observed during audit. Now, same for unannounced audit. If just to give an example, suppose there are 5 or less than 5 non-conformities, minor non-conformities, and the audit is announced audit, the company will get certification with A grade. However, if the same audit is conducted unannounced, they will get grade AA plus. So likewise, this is the difference between announced and unannounced audit and number of minor and major non-conformities the company is receiving. Please go to the next slide. The next popular standard is IFS, which is International Features Standard. Again, taking care of food safety and quality aspect of the food product and processes also. Now, this is version 6.1, which we are using right now, which was released in November 2017. This is, this has been developed by IFS team, IFS board, and ITC, that is IFS technical committee. So these are the these are the people or the committees who are controlling this standard. Now, as we have seen in DRC, there is a certification along with grade. Here in IFS standard, there is a certification with scores. So certification will be provided, which is provided with the scores. The typical scores are given out of 100, how much the company has been, has secured. So that will be given in this. Now, for this certification, every year there will be recertification. So the certification cycle is for 1 year, that is 12 months. The audit frequency is 12 months. In IFS standard also, there are two types of audit, announced and unannounced. But here a very nice thing is, if the company go for unannounced audit, the same thing that company has opted for unannounced audit will be mentioned on their certificate, which will give the additional weightage for their certificate. So this is element which is specific for IFS standard. Please go to the next slide. So there are now if you go through the elements of IFS standards, these are again similar elements, few things here and there, but overall the elements are same, which is senior management responsibility, which will take care of all the policies and how customer focus should be, how the management should be, and what they should be taking care. Then another aspect which will take care of the quality and food safety management system, including the HACCP part. Then the resource management, what are the specific resources required in terms of people, competent people, infrastructure, work environment, everything will be covered here. Then planning and production process, all sort of contracts, purchasing specification, everything regarding the production process will be taken care in specific requirement. Then measurement, analysis and improvement. Typically the audit part, calibration part will be taken care in this requirement. And food defense, now again very important aspect of food safety, which will take care of intentional contamination or intentional adulteration to the food product. So food defense is another a specific element of IFS standard. Similar to IFS standard, definitely certification will not be provided to them. So this is a very specific requirement. And again, senior management commitment, or let's say CCP monitoring system, and other thing in terms of raw material specification, correction, corrective action, audits, traceability. These are the knockout clauses, which is a very important requirement for IFS standard. Please go to the next slide. Now, if you see for every point, for every requirement, if the requirement is fulfilled, the score will be given accordingly. For example, if there is a requirement in the standard and the company has fulfilled that requirement, the 20 points will be given. Then if there is little bit deviation, there will be 15 points. So again, more deviation, there will be 20 points. And if the requirement has not been implemented, if there is no implementation or no effective implementation, there will be minus 20 points. Likewise, for every clause, every requirement, such kind of scoring will be given, and the company will be awarded with certification along with score. So please go to the next slide. So this was all about IFS standard. And now if you remember, IFS standard is saying about the requirement along with score. So certification with score. Yet another famous standard for food safety or food industry is SQF, that is safe quality food, which is also taking care of food safety as well as quality program. Now, if you remember, a BRC standard, SQF standard, and IFS standards, these are the three standards which are saying not only about food safety, but along with that, they are saying about food quality also. So this is very important to understand. This is recognized by retailers, brand owners, and food service providers worldwide. They are accepting this standard. And again, for this, the recent edition or recent revision is edition 8 for the standard. This was developed in 1994 in Australia, and since then the implementation has started. This was recognized by GFSI in 2004, and here there are major, minor, and critical non-conformities. Again, for this standard, there is unannounced audit minimum once in 3 year of cycle. So 3 साल में एक बार unannounced audit होगा, and that unannounced audit is, as I said, to understand the real situation or real status of implementation. Because what happens typically is when there is audit, everything is all everything is good, everything is okay. But if there is unannounced audit, the real implementation status will be understood by the auditor. This is again a very specific thing. Now, this is a mandatory that to go ahead with unannounced audit, but with advantage that whenever unannounced audit will happen, the same thing will be mentioned on the certificate, which will give the weightage to that certificate. So this is for SQF. Please go to the next one. The SQ standard contains again the similar points or similar element, which is management commitment. And if you refer to all food safety standards, and if you observe one thing, that all the standards start from management commitment, because that is the starting point. First, the management or the top management of the organization shall, themselves, they should identify why these all standards are important and how these standards should be implemented. So it start right from their responsibility, their commitment, then typical documentation and record control system, which is an integral part for any standard, specification and product development part. Then the next element is food safety system. That food safety system will take care of GMPs and food safety plan, which is also HACCP plan or has the hazard control plan. So here also the HACCP concept is there. Then verification, validation mechanism is also covered here. Product information or identification, traceability, or the system for withdrawal and recall is also covered in the requirement. Food defense, food fraud, this kind of intentional contamination or adulteration part, which is again a significant part for ensuring food safety, is also taken care. Allergen management, a very specific element in this standard. Even all GFSI approved standard do have this element. So allergen management. And last part or last important element of this standard is the training part, how the training should be provided and what is the importance of training. So this is the element of SQF standard. Please go to the next slide. Now, this standard is a combination of both. This standard contains scores as well as grading or rating. Now, the scores and grading or rating is significant to decide whether the organization shall be certified or not, and how much should be the frequency, what should be the frequency for next audit. Just to give an example, suppose there is a company who has secured 96 to 100 marks out of 100, then they will be rated as E, which is excellent, and certificate will be issued. And for them, the next audit or the next, we typically call that as a recertification audit, that will happen after 12 months, that is after a year. But if there is a company which has secured 70 to 85, the rating will be C, which is complies, which says the company complies with the requirement. Certificate will be issued, but the next audit will be in next 6 months, not in the year. So 6 monthly audit will be there, surveillance audit, and then there will be recertification audit after 1 year. Then if the company secures from 0 to 69 out of 100, then company will not be provided with certificate, and because they fail to comply with the requirement, and or as they have not got the certificate, the audit will be conducted as whenever they want. So they want to go ahead with the repeat audit so that they can comply with the requirement to go into the upper grade or upper rating. So this standards contains score as well as a rating system. Please go to the next slide. So up till now, we have been discussing various popular food safety standard in food industry. Then there is a process of certification and accreditation. So there is a international accreditation forum which controls all the certification process, and in that there are various certification bodies which will take care of certifying the company. So this is a typical flow chart or hierarchy for certification and accreditation process. Let's go to the next slide. Now, International Accreditation Forum will give authority to accreditation bodies, and accreditation bodies will give authorities to certification bodies to go to every company and do certification, and everything they are controlling. So, accreditation body is controlling the certification body, and IAF is controlling the various accreditation bodies. So, this is a structure which I have just covered in very briefly, not so much into detail. Let's go ahead. Now, why to go ahead with all food safety standards? So this is again a very important question which comes in mind because in the starting itself I said that all these certifications are international certifications which are voluntary. At least for India, it is not compulsion that every company must go ahead with certification, but still, most of the companies will opt for certification because first, they want to ensure the safety, they want to ensure the health of the consumer by systematically implementing this standard and minimizing risk to the food product. So they will implement the standards, and by implementation, they will try to minimize the food safety risk, thereby ensuring health of the consumer. So this is the first one. Second one is the recognition. Basically, when we say recognition, it means if someone has come to your organization, they have audited your organization and they have certified you, which means there is a certain kind of recognition provided to your organization, which says that you in your organization are implementing and consistently following all the norms given in that standard. So, which is a recognition given to the company. Third, very important part is global listing. Now, as far as GFSI approved standards are concerned, like FSSC, BRC, so all these standards they have the global list. If the organization go ahead with such certification, after getting certified, the name of the company along with all the information about product, address, and everything will be listed in the global list, saying that this and this company in this and this country at this location is certified under FSSC or under BRC. So once get certified, your name will reflect in the global listing, which will give the company a wider range, wider visibility in the global listing, global platform. So this is very important for all the companies, mostly who are going ahead with the GFSI approved certification. Then next, very important point is minimizing customers and consumer complaints. Now, every company will try not to have any complaint from customers and consumer, because as soon as they get any complaint, they have to take action, they have to resolve, they have to do a lot of work for that complaint in terms of root cause analysis. They have to take specific actions for that. So, by implementing this standard, we systematically analyze where are the gaps, where from any complaint can come, and then we are reducing that, thereby minimizing the customers and consumers' complaints, specifically regarding the food safety and quality aspect. Then, regulatory compliance. Every standard which we have been discussing right from starting, that will ask the company to do the regulatory compliance at first place, without which the certification will not be provided, which means when we are going ahead with any international food safety certification, that will ensure that regulatory compliance has been already taken care. So that is a regulatory compliance. Now, this is not only regulatory compliance, but the customer compliance also. The requirement for them is also complied, because customer, like when it is a B2B business, the customer will ask you to do any all sort of compliances in terms of complying the requirement, and you will go ahead with that requirement to fulfill the requirement when you go for certification. And the certification will give much more confidence in terms of customer confidence. You will feel confident about your systems and products, and that will in turn give the satisfaction regarding the food safety scenario. So these are some of the advantages or common reason why food safety standards should be implemented and what it will help to people, right? And when we say food safety, we have to remember one thumb rule: there is no zero risk. We cannot, we cannot make a risk to zero level, but definitely we can try, or we can do is to minimize the risk. So always we can try to minimize the risk. We can keep it to minimum level, but we can never make it zero. So all the food safety standards will take care to minimize the food safety risk to the minimum level. So this is food safety standard. Please go to the next slide. Now, for all the people who are listening to this session, they probably may think that why we need to learn or why we need to understand all food safety standards. Now, one very important reason which I can tell now is after the COVID-19 situation, after this lockdown is finished and everything is resuming, we can understand we as a consumer have become much more sensitive and careful about food safety aspect. The same industries has to take care of food safety, because in this situation, nobody will want to receive any food safety complaints, so they want to be sure about food safety. So this is very important. They have to stay, companies will always think that they have to stay in competition by implementing such standards. Every time they will try to think that how my system is better than the system of competitor, and thereby implementing better and better standards at higher and higher level. So this will be taken care of by implementation of the standard. More and more industries are going for certification and will keep going for certification, because obviously they want to be more sure about food safety. They want to increase the confidence about their product, the confidence about their systems. So they are going ahead with certification. Second is, even with certification they will get a wider market reach, so they will be visible to more customers, and certification will definitely add the value to their product. So this is one of the typical reason why all of us should know about food safety standards. Now, when companies are implementing food safety standards, they will definitely require the people who are aware, who knows about these food safety standards, who knows the element of the standard. They know how to implement the standard, how to do audit and everything. So companies will definitely look for such people, or rather, I should say, the candidates who are knowledgeable in such standards, and thereby it has become important criteria in terms of competency criteria for organizations when they select the candidates for interview. So they will typically see that, okay, this person is some background for food science or food technology, but what added knowledge he has for all these food safety certifications. So such person can play a multiple role in food industries apart from a regular role in production, quality, stores. They can play a very important role as a food safety team leader or food safety team member. So this is one. And now, as I can say that there are lot many people or students and professionals, they are opting to choose the career in terms of auditing or training. So as auditor or trainer also, they want to go ahead with such career, and for that the prerequisite is to understand food safety standards, and to take training for food safety standards. So this is again very important. Please go to the next slide. So, as I said, we at Foodiesys Consulting, we do conduct so many types of trainings through the Foodiesys Consulting, which includes all the detailed training for HACCP, ISO, BRC, FSSC. I think many of the people might have attended some of the training from this also. I'm also conducting FSSI training for FASTag training. So, this is basically the list of trainings which Foodiesys Consulting offers to all of you. Please go to the next slide. All right, so this is all from my side. So thank you so much, everyone, for patient listening. And now I would like to take question and answers. And I mean, I would like to put question and would like to answer those questions. So over to you, uh, Imran.
Thank you, madam. Thank
Yeah,
you very much for your valuable time, your experience sharing. We have 4 to 5 questions, ma'am.
please go
So
ahead.
we'll just so first one is from Anil Kumar. He
Okay.
want to know, in order to get for local products, is there any need for the certification?
Okay. See, basically, when you use the word need, then I would say there is no need, because this certification are not mandatory. Okay. However, these are voluntary certification, or rather than, I mean, optional certification. So as such, there is no need, but definitely, it is important to go for certification, because that will take care of food safety. I hope I have answered the question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, next one is, one of your slide you mentioned about the audit scoring and certification.
Correct.
So in that a rating is given those who have got below 69. So
Hmm.
no certificate is issued. So in the absence of that, without certification, can that company run their plant, or how much time is
Yes.
given to fill out that particular lacuna?
No, no, it's not like that. If the company has gone for audit and they have got the scores which is below 69 for that standard, then certification will not be issued to that company. And company can run with or without certification. So certifications are not mandatory; those are optional because because those are optional certification or voluntary certification. Companies can run their business, but what they have to ensure is they do take care of the compliance part, which is the regulatory compliance. Now for India, what is mandatory is FSSAI compliance, which means taking FSSAI license and abiding by all the rules and regulations which are mentioned in FSSAI for food industry. So for India, for Indian food industries, that is something mandatory without which you are not, you should not, run the company. But as far as the certifications are concerned, certifications are not mandatory. Those are optional. Company will decide to go for certification or not to go first, and they will decide which certification they want to go ahead with. Like for example, if company okay, the company is new and the systems are new, starting they can go for the simpler certification like HACCP or ISO. Later on, once they get confidence, they can go ahead with the higher standard. So nothing is mandatory as far as the standard or certifications are concerned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another is the basic questions
Huh.
from one of our participants. What is the basic difference between HACCP and ISO? And nowadays, the FOSTAC, the certificate is also running very eagerly into the industrial areas. So, what is the basic difference between this certification? If you already have HACCP, then is there a need to go for FOSTAC?
As far as the FOSTEC is concerned, FOSTEC is mandatory for every company. Every company should make sure that in their company, for every 25 people, there is minimum one person who is certified under FOSTEC. So FOSTEC training for every company it is mandatory. Now, as far as the candidate, individual person or student is concerned, they can go ahead with this FOSTEC training because if they are qualified, if they are certified under FOSTEC, companies will see if you are FOSTEC certified, you will be appointed and the certification requirement for the company will be complete, completed with your presence. So this certification is for individual. ये जो फास्टैग का सर्टिफिकेट है ये हर पर्सन को इंडिविजुअली मिलेगा, लेकिन कंपनी को ये रिक्वायरमेंट फुलफिल करना पड़ेगा कि उनके यहाँ पे 25 लोगों में एक, अगर 25 से कम है तो कम से कम एक, और 25 से ज्यादा लोग काम करते हैं तो हर 25 लोगों के लिए एक पर्सन कंपल्सरीली फास्टैग सर्टिफाइड होना ही चाहिए. So this is FASTag. HACCP and ISO certifications are again voluntary certification. तो उसका certificate what company will see that if you have that certificate, which means you have knowledge about HACCP standard and ISO standard. So this is basic difference between HACCP ISO certificate and FASTag certificate.
Okay, okay. And last one, ma'am.
हाँ.
One of the participants asked on what basis these numbers
हाँ.
are fixed. Like for example, ISO 22,000, ISO
हाँ.
20,000. So on what
Okay.
basis these numbers are fixed? If he does not get any certificate, then is there any punishable offense in order to get this absence of the certified? अगर नहीं करते तो कुछ punishable है या it does not need any kind of offense?
So as I said right from starting that ये जो certification हम बात कर रहे हैं HACCP, ISO, PRC, FSSC, ये standard और ये certification companies के लिए compulsory नहीं है. ये voluntary है. Companies will think that I want to have improvement in my company. I want to reduce the food safety risk. To reduce that food safety risk systematically, they will go ahead with certification. So certification नहीं भी लेते हैं तो कंपनी चल सकती है, बिजनेस कर सकते हैं, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. बट ओनली थिंग इज दैट दे हैव टू कंप्लाई विथ FSSAI रिक्वायरमेंट फॉर इंडिया. What do you ask? Second question. I just missed that question.
Means on what basis these numbers are fixed? Like for
Okay.
example, uh, they
Right.
have
Right.
22,000, 20,000. So why not 10,000? Why not 8,000?
Okay. So to answer to that question, there is no any answer to this question because these are just the number given to that particular standard. Now this is as simple as जैसे हमारे अटेंडेंस में एक हमारा नाम होता है और रोल नंबर होता है. तो किसको रोल नंबर ये क्यों दिया ऐसा कोई आंसर नहीं. दिस इज जस्ट अ नंबर सीरीज है एंड every standard is allotted with one number, so there is no justification why it is 22,000, why it is 22000, why not any other number. This is just a number given to that particular standard, which means if it is ISO 9000 it is quality management system, if it is FSMS it is ISO 22000. So 22,000, 9000, 14,000, ये सिर्फ नंबर है. किसको कौन से स्टैंडर्ड को दिए हुए हैं, क्यों दिए हैं, इसका कोई जस्टिफिकेशन नहीं. ये सिर्फ नंबर है, अलग अलग स्टैंडर्ड को अलॉट किए हैं. So there is no justification for the number. I hope I have answered the question.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. It's our pleasure to have you with us. And thank you for your valuable guidance, your time, which you have given for our participants, your experience, your stellar information, your informative information experiences will be helpful, beneficial for the participants in order to implement in their futuristic life. So let's
Absolutely.
hope that all the participants should get benefited from this particular session.
Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
ma'am.
much for giving me opportunity to go to this presentation and this session, and I would be more than happy to conduct other sessions for students. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. There is one information for the participants. Please see the description. In the description, a feedback link is given. So go to that feedback link, because in order to get the e-certificate which we are going to provide for you, so for that reason you need to fill up that feedback form. And for further notification of the next session when it is getting conducted, whether it is postponed or not, for further notification you have to subscribe our YouTube channel, that is KSK FTC at the KSK CFT bid. So hope these two sessions from morning, Mr. Satish Borkhade sir, and evening, Mrs. Sumedha ma'am. Both two sessions will be very much beneficial for you all. So let's hope that you all get clearly understand what these both sessions means for you all. There is one kindly note that tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock we have eminent speaker, Mr. Dr. Irana Udachan, who is assistant professor in the Department of Food Technology, Shivaji University, Kolhapur. So he is sharing his experiences in the field of academician as well as scope of food technology. That is the basic thing which each and every student has in their mind. That after completion of BTech, what we have to do and where to go. So in order to get conceptuals by these particular problems, we have to need to go through the tomorrow's seminar. So guys, thank you very much for listening, and we'll meet tomorrow in the morning. Till then, goodbye, good evening, thank you.